And today, to continue the Linux Certification Virtual Summit, we have Asghar Ghori, and he is going to tell us about how to pass the Red Hat Certified System Administrator exam. Asghar?
Hi, Tiffany. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about myself and shed some light on the RHCSA exam. I would also like to congratulate you on coming up with this idea of virtual summit on popular Linux certifications and running with it.
Thank you, sir.
Coming to myself, I'm Asghar Ghori. I'm Unix and Linux consultant, trainer, and author. I've been in IT for over 25 years now, and I have offered my expertise in Linux and Unix and infrastructure services surrounding these operating system platforms to many corporations. I worked with a variety of Unix systems such as Solaris, HP Unix, excuse me, IBM AIX, Digital Unix, SCO Unix, and on the Linux side, I have had the opportunity to work with many Linux distributions and their popular spin-offs such as Debian, Ubuntu, Slackware, SUSE, CentOS, Oracle Linux, Scientific Linux, Fedora, and of course, Red Hat. My experience as a consultant ranges from deployment support and administration to architecture design and consulting. I've designed and delivered numerous training programs as a trainer, and I have 3 books on Unix and 3 books on Linux on my credit as a published author. I guess that's it about me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Asghar. That's
Well,
wonderful. And thank you for being a part of this summit. I do appreciate your participation. And let's get right down to it. So you wrote all these books about Linux. And from that, I can tell you're a Linux expert. I just want to know what made you decide to become Linux certified?
well, I began working with Unix in 1990 and later with Linux. It was an early version of Red Hat Linux when I started. I believe it was version 5. I studied on my own with the help of available written material at that time and assistance from my peers. I earned my first Linux certification called Red Hat Certified Technician, RHCT, in 2005. That exam was performance based, and that was my first ever exam in that format. Prior to that, I had earned Unix, Novell, and Microsoft certifications, but they were all based on multiple choice questions. I think it was just normal as a Unix professional to also learn Linux and earn Linux certifications. I know many of my peers had taken that route as well.
Perfect, perfect. So I just want to elaborate real quickly. You said you started off with Unix first, and then you moved to Linux Red Hat. Can you kind of just explain to our audience that's not too familiar with Unix that what is Unix?
Unix is an operating system that was created a long time ago in 1960s, and it is you can say Linux was originated from Unix.
Okay, gotcha. All righty. Okay, so how did you prepare for your RHCSA exam?
Well, I had taken official training courses in Unix system administration, troubleshooting, and internals. Linux is very similar to Unix. If you know and have worked with a Unix flavor, you should be able to pick up things in Linux very quickly. I downloaded the exam objectives from Red Hat's website, reviewed them, and started my preparation. Since I had knowledge and experience in Unix, I downloaded and studied a few guides available on Red Hat's website, got some help from online forums, and the most important thing, I practiced real hard. I built a lab at home and I just practiced and practiced. It was the first time I was preparing for a performance-based exam. All the exams I had taken in the past tested my memory. So it was a very unique experience.
Thank you. Do you, by any chance, recall what those online forms were?
Online forums?
Yeah, that helped you prepare for the exam.
I just Googled, and
Okay.
I don't recall exact names of the forums, but I just Googled and found, different places, and I just, read information here and there. So, you know,
Okay. Cool. The power of Google, huh?
yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of study habits should someone like myself or someone that's preparing for this Red Hat Certified System Admin exam focus on?
I would say the habit of learning by practice. As a Linux system administrator, you are expected to administer services running on a number of network Linux systems. Keeping that in mind, I would pick a guide that teaches the concepts and builds your knowledge and skills progressively from both learning and exam preparation standpoints. And if you can afford the cost and spare a full week, I would suggest taking the relevant training course from Red Hat. Yep.
Okay, okay, great, great. So you did mention a few guides, but are there any specific resources in addition to the guides that you mentioned to help prepare for this exam?
Yeah, there are a number of helpful resources available. There are training providers that train you for a fee. There are a ton of online forums you can refer to. There are product guides available from Red Hat that you can use. There are books available on the subject as well. My book titled RHCSA and RHCE Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 Training and Exam Preparation Guide, third edition, is available in both paperback and ebook formats. A simple internet search will show you retailer links. This book also elaborates on what you need in terms of hardware and software resources in order to build your own lab for practicing the exercises presented in the book. Yep.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. So,
You're welcome.
what Linux commands, of any, should I focus on while trying to pass this exam? Any particular?
I believe you should focus on the concepts, installation, configuration, and administration aspects associated with each exam objective as published on Red Hat's website and also outlined in my book. That way you will know how to perform a task on a live Linux system. This will automatically cover the necessary commands that you need to know as well.
Okay, okay. Can you elaborate a little bit more, like installation? Are you talking about the RPM command or what in particular? I'm just trying
Sure.
to get an idea. Mm-hmm.
There are a number of commands in Linux. Many of them are for general purpose use, and any normal user on the system can run them to obtain what they're looking for. For instance, commands such as ls to list files and folders, pwd to display your location in the directory structure, cd to navigate through the directory structure, who to list users currently signed on, who am I to view your current ID, date to display system date and time, men to view a command or file manual pages, ps nice and renice for process management, mkdir, touch, cat, cp, rm, mv, file, ln, find, gzip, bzip2, and tar for file and folder operations, vi for editing files, grep for regular expression, and so on and so forth. There are just a ton of them. These commands are basic and you're expected to know their use. Other commands are topic or service specific. Examples are lsblk, fdisk, gdisk, and parted for partition management. Commands that begin with pv, vg, and lv for logical volume management. Similarly, mkfs, resize2fs, tune2fs, xfsadmin, xfsinfo, mount, umount, blkid, df and du for file system administration, rpm and yum for software management, firewall cmd for firewall d management, system ctl for service management, user add, user mod, user del, group add, group mod, group del, change chh, password and id for user and group management, chmod, chown, and chgrp for file permission and ownership management, mkswap and swap1 for swap management, get FACL and set FACL for ACL management, chcon and SE manage for SE Linux management, ifconfig, IP, nmcli for network interface management, authconfig or authconfig TUI for OpenLDAP client configuration, crontab for scheduling a recurring task, and so on and so forth. So in short, you should know the commands that are used on a regular basis, as well as service or topic specific commands. And you will understand the syntax, how to use them, and you should be able to memorize them when you follow the learn by practice method.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you so much. That is a great knowledge amount of commands, I will tell you. So let me ask you, what is the best way, or what is the best way that you've navigated taking the hands-on exam? Is there a specific way you should do it, or should you just dive right into taking hands-on exams?
Well, while you're in the exam, I think the best way is to read all the information provided thoroughly and note down the configuration information provided as part of that information. Note down your system hostname and IP address. Note down the remote system's hostname and IP address, hosting software, config files, and repositories. Note down the remote system's hostname and IP address running DNS, LDAP, and NFS services. You will need this information to configure the network interface on your system. You will need this information to configure DNS, LDAP, and NFS client functionalities on your system, YUM repositories, and pull required files from the remote systems. Some some key points to note for the RHCSA exams, though, are number one, you must be able to perform exam tasks without access to the internet, a mobile device, any written material, any human help, or any other form of assistance except for the installed manual pages and the documentation located in the /usr/share/doc directory. Number two, you must know how to reset a lost or forgotten password for the root user account when there is no current root session going. Number three, you must be comfortable with using a text file editing tool such as the VI editor. Number four, you must be able to configure a YUM repository located on a remote FTP or HTTP server. Number five, all your configuration changes on the system must be available and in working state after after subsequent system reboots. Thanks.
Wow. So you need to know your stuff pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you compare this Red Hat Certified System Admin exam to the Red Hat Certified Engineering exam and the CompTIA Linux Plus certification in difficulty level? How would you rank this Red Hat exam?
Yeah. The RHCSA exam is an intermediate level Linux exam. It is more difficult than CompTIA Linux Plus exam, but less difficult than RHCE. I suggest newbies to study and take the CompTIA Linux Plus exam first, and then go for RHCSA, and then for RHCE if they so desire. This way, they'll study, practice, and build their Linux skills progressively.
Okay, great. So let's discuss your progression from being a certified Unix administrator in 1999 to your most recent Linux certifications. And why did you decide to go the route you chose in regards to your Linux certifications?
Well, I started learning Unix and working with Unix on the first day of my first job back in 1990. There were limited formal training opportunities available from vendors in those days. However, they were expensive and required travel and accommodation in most cases. Online access was limited. I kept my focus on learning Unix, taking advantage of the written material available at that time. I decided to switch to Linux as it had matured over time and companies realized the flexibility and the support cost associated with running their mission critical applications on Linux. As they began migrating their applications to Linux, the demand for learning and getting certified surged. That encouraged me to pursue certifications in Linux to increase my marketability.
Great. So you wrote 3 Red Hat training exam prep guides. What inspired you to write these study guides? And can you share some details on the guides that you've written? I know you've mentioned that you recently had wrote a book that's out now, but can you just elaborate more on what inspired you to write these study guides?
Sure. I had authored and published 3 training and exam prep guides on HP Unix prior to switching my attention to writing books on Red Hat Linux. I decided to help RHCSA and RHCE certification aspirants, as well as those wanting to learn Red Hat Enterprise Linux by writing something for them in simple and easy to understand language, along with labs and exercises to strengthen the concepts learned. All my books discuss concepts, commands, configuration files, and provide step-by-step instructions on how to install, configure, and administer tasks and services. My first book on Red Hat Linux addresses version 5. The second one is on version 6, and the latest is on version 7. And this latest, sorry.
No problem. Go ahead.
And this latest version, which is on version 7, covers the basics of Linux first, and then the objectives for the RHCSA and RHCE exams. The book is divided into two sections. Section 1 is spread over 13 chapters and it covers the foundation material on Linux and the RHCSA exam objectives. And section 2, with 12 chapters, discusses all that you need to know to prepare for the RHCE exam. The RHCSA section talks about RHEL 7 installation, general Linux concepts, basic Linux commands, compression and archiving tools, the VI editor, and online help, file and directory manipulation, and security tools and techniques, processes, task scheduling, common bash shell features, software package administration, YAM repository setup, host virtualization with KVM, network and automated installations, system boot process, kernel management, system deinitialization scheme, message logging, user and group administration, storage partitioning, file system build, auto mounting remote file systems, swap space administration, access control lists, firewall D, SE Linux management, network interface configuration, network time protocol, and LDAP client configurations, secure shell, and TCP wrappers. So that's all part of the first section of the book. In the second section, which focuses on the RHCE objectives, there are more networking aspects of the operating system. This section covers shell scripting, network interface bonding and teaming, IP version 6 and routing setups, remote time synchronization, firewall D, Kerberos authentication, kernel tuning, resource utilization reporting, iSCSI, NFS, Samba, web servers, virtual hosting, email, DNS, and Marriott database. Each chapter in the book highlights the major topics and relevant exam objectives covered in that chapter and ends with a chapter summary followed by review questions and answers and do-it-yourself challenge labs. There are figures, tables, and screenshots provided throughout the book to support the explanation. The book also includes 2 sample exams for RHCSA and 2 for RHCE, and are expected to be done using the knowledge and skills gained from reading the material and practicing the exercises and challenge labs. That's it.
Perfect, perfect. So there's a lot of content in your books, which is great to help someone like me prepared for the Red Hat, both exams, the Red Hat Certified System Admin and Certified Engineer. I am truly excited. So, what has being a Linux certified professional and author of Red Hat certifications, how has that impacted your life?
Well, being the author and certified seasoned professional with lots of years of experience, I'm looked at as a go-to person in my professional life. I mentor other administrators on the job, and I like that. If you're talking about how being Linux certified and an author impacted my personal life at home, I'm no different than what I was before those accomplishments. I'm still a husband, a father, a son, and a brother.
Great, great. So you did mention that you mentor other professionals, Red Hat professionals. How do you take on someone that's looking to be mentored? Like, is there a particular requirement that they need to have, or what?
Well, there are no specific requirements, just if they're eager to learn and get certified, I welcome them.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So me and you will be talking later about you mentoring
Sure,
me. Okay.
sure.
For the person who's being introduced to the world of Linux right now, newbie, what advice would you give him or her?
Well, I encourage them to follow learn by practice approach, and that's what I try to project in my books and trainings as well. You start with CompTIA Linux Plus and work your way up through RHCSA and RHCE. I believe this progressive approach will help them become a successful Linux system administrator as well.
Okay, great, great. So they have to start with CompTIA Linux first, work their way up, and they'll be on their way.
Yeah,
Great.
CompTIA Linux Plus is very basic stuff. It covers the basics of Linux, general Linux. So when you're done with your Linux Plus exam, then you should be able to pick up RHCSA material rather, easily.
Mm-hmm. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so what are a few gems about RHCSA that you can provide for someone just in the early preparation preparation stage for taking the exam, and what can they do leading up to take the exam?
Well, as I said earlier, the RHCSA exam is a performance-based exam. You must know how to actually do things on a live system. And in order to know that and feel comfortable on the exam, you have to practice and practice and practice. And for this practice, you build your own lab as per the instructions provided in my book.
Perfect. Okay. So there's a debate going around in regards to experience versus certification. So, what is your take on experience versus certification in regards to Linux?
Well, you mean work experience versus certification?
Yes. Uh huh.
Okay. Okay. I believe performance-based certifications add value to your experience. You study for certification, you work hard to make sure you pass the exam, you spend days and nights on live systems doing exercises and labs and troubleshoot issues. You run different commands, you modify different configuration files, you look at log files, etc., etc. All this hard work to earn certification is in reality part of your experience as well. That's what my take on that is.
I totally agree, especially for someone like me. If I didn't study to learn about these, so okay, I have CompTIA Linux Plus, and I feel like
Okay.
if I didn't take the chance and time to learn about CompTIA, I wouldn't have gained the experience to know the basics and know my way around the command line. So I agree with you. And thank you for saying that, because there's a lot of folks out here who may feel discouraged about not having that particular, say, 20 years of experience just yet. But when you take these certifications and you study your butt off and you can prove that you know what you're doing, I think that speaks a lot to it.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you have any specific strategies or steps that I missed asking you about that you want to provide for someone trying to become Red Hat certified?
I guess we covered pretty much everything. I believe every individual has their own way of observing things and own approach to doing things. What I have talked about in the last hour or so are my personal views based on my own observations, study, and experience. So, yeah,
Okay, okay. Well, thank you so much, Ashgar, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I know that the knowledge that you gave us here today and the reference to your books, that whoever is looking to be certified with Red Hat, they can do it. Thank you and have a great one.
thanks,
All right.
Tiffany, for your time.